Move back home, my father urged. Family needs to be together. On move-in day, my stepmother grabbed me at the door, her slaps cracking hard, stamping her claim on my cheek. I looked up at the doorbell camera, its red light glowing. I remembered the morality clause she herself forced the entire company to sign. Tonight, at Norcrest Dynamics, that clause will swallow her whole, activated by me. My name is Tamsin Vale. I am 32 years old, and I was carrying the last box into the house that was never my home. Ardent Falls, the Foxbridge neighborhood. It's a place engineered for quiet, expensive success. The lawns are crew-cut velvet, the air thick with the chemical bite of fresh-cut grass, and the heavier sterile tang of chlorine from automatic sprinkler systems that water lawns nobody walks on. The houses are monuments to beige conformity, but this one, his one, glows with a particularly smug, warm yellow light, the family house. The box in my arms was heavy, filled with textbooks on risk assessment and corporate liability, the tools of my trade. It was a stupid thing to bring first, but it was the heaviest, and I wanted it out of the way. It was a physical burden to match the emotional one of stepping back across this threshold. My father, Grant Vale, stood just inside the doorway, silhouetted against the bright foyer. He was already wringing his hands, a habit that defined his entire existence. "Tamsin, thank goodness," he'd said on the phone. "We need to heal. We need to be a family." Family, to Grant Vale. Family was a photograph. It was something you arranged and smiled for, and then put back on the mantel. His words were the only reason I was here. His pathetic plea for reconciliation, pulling me back into the one place I'd sworn I'd never return to. I'd left at 19, and in the 13 years since, I'd built a life, a career, based on identifying and neutralizing threats. And the primary threat was now blocking the porch. Dahlia Crane, my stepmother, the chief operating officer of Norcrest Dynamics, a woman who ran a multi-billion-dollar logistics empire with the same iron-fisted, zero-empathy control she used to manage this household. She stood under the porch light, which caught the harsh blonde of her hair and the perfect, sharp crease in her linen trousers. She looked at the cardboard box in my arms as if it were crawling with insects. "Don't bring your trash in here." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was low, perfectly modulated, and carried the absolute authority of a boardroom executioner. It sliced through the humid evening air, louder than the distant hiss of the Henderson's sprinklers. I stopped, one foot on the doormat, the other on the stone step. My father flinched behind her, a shadow vibrating in the hallway. "Dahlia, now. She's just—" I didn't look at him. I looked at her. "It's just books, Dahlia." "It's yours," she corrected, "and I don't want it stinking up the foyer. Take it around the back. You can use the mudroom." "The mudroom?" "You're not a guest. Tamsin, you're back. You'll be in the storage room over the garage. It's temporary." Everything was temporary with Dahlia. Your position, your comfort, your safety. I shifted the box. "Grant asked me to come home. He didn't say I'd be in storage." "Grant doesn't manage this house. I do." She took a step forward, invading my personal space. The scent of her perfume, a sharp, aggressive sandalwood, hit me like a warning shot. "You're here on my sufferance. You will follow my rules. And the first rule is, you don't bring your filth through my front door." I should have turned around. I should have walked back to my car, driven back to my sterile downtown apartment, and continued my life. But I saw my father's desperate, pleading face over her shoulder. I saw the trap he was in, the trap he'd let her build around him. And I saw the tiny, dark circle on the wall next to the door. I took a breath. "I'm not using the mudroom." That was the mistake. It was the challenge. It was the one thing she couldn't tolerate. The first slap was a sonic event. It wasn't a slap as you imagine it. It was a crack, a sharp, wet explosion that vaporized the ambient sound of the suburbs. It came from her left hand, open-palmed, and connected with a physicist's precision. her COO's signet ring catching the soft skin just below my cheekbone. My head snapped to the right. The box of books tilted, and I dropped it. It landed with a heavy, muffled thud on the porch steps, spilling textbooks on corporate governance. My ear rang, a high-pitched digital whine. The world went white at the edges. The second slap came before I could inhale. This one was a backhand. Her right. It struck the exact same spot. The ring digging deeper. Pain wasn't just a sensation. It was a color, a blinding, searing magnesium flare behind my eyes. My balance vanished. I fell back, my hand flailing out, and I caught the wrought iron railing of the porch. My knuckles screamed as they hit the metal, but the pain was distant. The primary sensation was the throbbing, burning heat on my face. I tasted salt and copper. Blood. My lip was split. I held onto the railing, grounding myself. The yellow porch light seemed to pulse with the ringing in my ear. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at my father. I looked at the doorbell. It was a sleek, modern device, black, minimalist, and in the center of its dark lens, a tiny, perfect, brilliant red dot glowed. Rec. The world came into focus around that red light. It was my North Star. It was my witness. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Mrs. Henderson, 2 doors down, had been watering her hydrangeas. She was frozen, the hose dangling in her hand. Her husband, pulling his trash bin to the curb, stopped. He saw it all. Then, in perfect, unspoken suburban choreography, he turned his back. He deliberately bent over to adjust the wheel on his bin. Mrs. Henderson abruptly turned and walked back into her house, the screen door slamming with a cheap slap of its own. They had looked, and then they had langed. They had chosen not to see. "Dahlia!" My father's voice was a weak, fluttering thing. "My God, what now? Now, let's all just calm down." He didn't move. He stood in the doorway, 5 feet away, a spectator in his own life. He made no move to help me, no move to defend me. He just vibrated with useless anxiety. Dahlia hadn't moved. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling under her silk blouse. She was energized by the violence. She was waiting for me to cry, to scream, to fight back. I did none of those things. I kept my eyes locked on the red Rex light. I let the camera capture the blood that was now welling up from the cut on my lip, tracing a warm, sticky path down my chin. I could feel the individual muscle fibers in my cheek beginning to swell. I leaned in, just slightly, a fractional movement, just enough to ensure the microphone would catch it over the sound of the crickets. I spoke, and my voice was a whisper, rough from the impact. "Thank you for the timestamp." I watched her face, illuminated by the porch light. Her expression faltered, the rage momentarily replaced by confusion. She didn't understand the words. They were out of context. But I understood them. My phone, silent in my pocket, was already executing the script. The moment the doorbell's motion sensor had detected her movement, the lunge, it had started recording. The clip, ending 30 seconds after my voice command, was already uploading, not to the consumer-grade cloud account linked to the doorbell app, but to a partitioned, encrypted S3 bucket I had configured last week, paid for by a shell corporation. The upload triggered a Lambda function, which automatically hashed the file, a SHA-256 checksum, and emailed the metadata, the hash, and the clip itself to a digital notary service, creating an immutable time-stamped record. The evidence was already secure. It was already off-site. It was already in the cloud I controlled, not hers. My cheek felt like it was on fire, a massive, swollen weight. The blood dripped onto the collar of my white shirt. Dahlia recovered. She mistook my coldness for shock, my silence for submission. She stepped closer, bending down until her face was inches from mine. Her eyes were chips of ice. She whispered, her voice a low, venomous hiss. "In this house, I am the law." I slowly pushed myself upright, using the railing. I never broke eye contact with her. I let her see the calculation in my eyes. I let her see that I was not broken, not scared, not even angry. I was auditing. I bent down, my cheeks screaming in protest, and calmly began to gather my textbooks. Principles of corporate liability, risk assessment in hostile environments. I picked up the box. I looked at her, at the blood on my shirt, at my father still frozen in the doorway. And I thought, in this house, you are the law. But at Norcrest Dynamics, the law is the zero violence morality clause you had the entire C-suite sign, the one that's a covenant on the new corporate bonds, the one that's an addendum to my firm's auditing contract, the one you just violated, on video, using a camera registered as a corporate asset. I stepped past her, over the threshold, and into the house. The smell of vanilla-scented candles and expensive floor wax washed over me. No, I thought, the metallic taste of my own blood filling my mouth. In the company, the law isn't what you say, it's what you signed. The house swallowed the sound of my entry. Thick rugs, heavy drapes, a silence engineered to absorb any unwelcome noise. On the polished mahogany console table in the foyer, the first thing you see is the photograph. It's the official portrait of the Vale Crane family, professionally shot last Christmas. My father, Grant Vale, stands in the center, his hand resting on Dahlia's shoulder. He's wearing his navy blazer, the one with the Ardent Falls Charitable Foundation pin on the lapel. He is the town's professional philanthropist, the handsome, silver-haired face of good causes. His smile is practiced, radiating a kind of gentle, passive benevolence that has raised millions for hospital wings and library extensions. He is the face. Dahlia is the brain, seated in front of him. She wears a cream-colored sheath dress that probably cost more than my first car. Her posture is perfect, her smile a thin, disciplined curve. She is the COO of Norcrest Dynamics, the logistical titan that is the largest employer in a 3-county radius. She moves markets, restructures divisions, and terminates executives with the same bloodless efficiency. She is power made flesh. The lighting in the photo is soft, warm, and expensive. It catches the highlights in Dahlia's hair and the comforting weave of my father's blazer. In the background, a fireplace crackles, and a perfectly placed scented candle sits on the mantel. Le Labo Santal 26. I know the scent without even needing to see the label. It's the smell of controlled, curated wealth. The image screams stability, grace, and impenetrable unity. I'm not in the picture. I touched the side of my face, my fingers coming away sticky with drying blood. The throbbing was a low, steady drumbeat, a physical reminder of the truth that lay just outside the gilded frame. 13 years. I had been gone for 13 years, ever since the screaming match that ended with me packing a single duffel bag at 19 and never looking back. I built a life from scratch. An apartment, a degree, a career. I built walls. Then, 2 months ago, the phone call. My father. His voice was thin, reedy, full of the manufactured emotion he used on donors. Tamsin, it's time. It's been too long. Dahlia agrees. We want you to come home. Let's just heal. Heal. Like I was a wound that inconvenienced the perfect skin of their lives. I'd said no, a dozen times. But he was persistent, pathetic. He wore me down with talk of time being short, of regrets, of family being all that matters in the end. I knew it wasn't his idea. It was Dahlia's. Everything was always Dahlia's idea. I just hadn't understood the why. Not yet. So I'd agreed. I'd packed my life into boxes, put my apartment into storage, and come back to heal. Dahlia led me up the back staircase, the one the staff uses, past the pristine guest rooms with their perfectly plumped pillows. She stopped at a narrow door at the end of the hall, over the garage. This will be you, for now. She opened the door. The air that rolled out was stale, smelling of mothballs and cedar. It was a storage room, not a bedroom. A storage room. Boxes labeled Christmas ornaments and fall decorations were stacked against one wall. A single cot, the kind used for camping, was set up in the middle of the room with a thin mattress and a single, flat pillow. There was no closet, just a metal rack on wheels. "It's temporary," she said, her tone making it clear that my entire existence here was temporary. "We'll clear it out properly when we have time." She saw me as a piece of clutter, a wrinkle in the smooth fabric of her life that needed to be managed, contained, and eventually ironed out of existence. I was an unresolved issue, and Dahlia Crane did not tolerate unresolved issues. "No drama, Tamsin," that was her favorite phrase, her mantra. She'd sent it to me in a text message the night before I was due to arrive. "So glad you're coming tomorrow. Let's make a fresh start. No drama." But Dahlia was a connoisseur of drama. She didn't avoid it. She manufactured it. She created small crises, engineered confrontations, and set emotional fires just to be the one to put them out. Reinforcing her control, a quiet house was a house she couldn't manage. My presence was a new variable, a new source of potential chaos she needed to dominate from the outset. That slap on the porch wasn't about a box of books. It was about establishing the hierarchy. It was a preemptive strike. Her obsession with control was absolute, and it bled seamlessly from her personal life into her professional one. This was most evident in her signature corporate initiative, the Norcrest Dynamics Zero Violence Policy. It had been her pet project for the last year, a brilliant piece of public relations theater. She'd hired a fleet of consultants, held town halls, and personally spearheaded a company-wide campaign. It was a comprehensive, ironclad morality clause added to every employee contract, from the janitorial staff to the C-suite. It forbade not only workplace harassment, but also any act of violence or significant ethical breach by an employee, on or off company property, that could bring the company into disrepute. She'd given speeches about it, her face projected onto massive screens at shareholder meetings. "Norcrest is more than a company," she'd declared, her voice resonating with rehearsed sincerity. "It is a community, and in this community, we have zero tolerance for violence. We are a safe place. We protect our own. That is not just a policy. It is our promise." On paper, Norcrest was the safest workplace in America, a bastion of corporate responsibility. In the real world, my split lip and swelling cheek were the campaign's true poster. The promise was a lie, and the author of that lie had just given me the proof. The world is built on interlocking systems of risk and liability. I know this because it is my job. I am the team lead for corporate risk assessment at Palomar and Pike, one of the top consulting firms in the country. We are the people companies hire to find their vulnerabilities before their enemies do. We audit their culture, stress test their policies, and map out the precise ways their own rules can be used to destroy them. And for the last 6 months, Palomar and Pike has been the exclusive auditing partner for Norcrest Dynamics. My promotion to team lead coincided with the signing of the Norcrest contract. Dahlia had insisted on my firm, the best in the business. She'd said, I'm sure she thought it was a delicious irony. Having her problematic stepdaughter's firm on the payroll, it was another flex of her power, another way to remind me of my place. She had no idea. On the desk in my real office, the one I'd be working from remotely for the next few weeks, sits a thick binder. It's the preliminary file for the Norcrest Corporate Culture and C-Level Compliance Audit. It is my project. My signature will be on the final report. Inside that binder is a copy of the Zero Violence Policy. There are transcripts of Dahlia's speeches. There are the risk analyses my team has already conducted on the policy's legal enforceability. We had flagged it as a high-risk, high-reward strategy. Powerful PR, but dangerously exposed if a senior executive were ever to publicly breach it. I stood there in the silent, vanilla-scented foyer, the echo of the slap still humming in the bones of my skull. I finally understood why she wanted me back. My father's loneliness was the excuse, but it wasn't the reason. She wanted me here, under her roof, under her control, while my firm was auditing hers. She wanted to neutralize the threat she perceived I represented. She wanted me too close to see clearly. She had miscalculated. She thought this house was her territory, a place where her rules were absolute. She didn't realize that by bringing me here, she had extended the jurisdiction of her own corporate policy right up to her front door. I ran my tongue over the cut on my lip. The pain was sharp, clean. It was a data point. A single act of violence, performed at the right time, in the right place, in front of the right witness. It wasn't just a slap. It was a key turning in a lock. It was the flick of a switch, activating a cascade of clauses and consequences she had meticulously designed herself. She had built the perfect trap, and I was now going to show her how it worked. In the cold, stale air of the storage room, I sat on the edge of the cot. The cheap metal frame groaned under my weight. My cheek was a tight, hot mass of pain. The skin pulled taut over the swelling. The blood on my lip had flaked, and the metallic taste was a constant reminder. But I wasn't thinking about the pain. I was thinking about the architecture. A house is a structure. A corporation is a structure. A financial deal is a structure. They all have load-bearing walls, and they all have points of catastrophic failure. Dahlia saw herself as an architect of empire. I see myself as a structural engineer. I find the flaws. And Dahlia's entire life was a monument to a single, critical design flaw: her own arrogance. The trap wasn't set tonight. The trap has been in place for months, waiting for the trigger. Tonight, she just walked into it. The first piece. The bonds. 3 months ago, Dahlia took Norcrest Dynamics on a triumphant roadshow. She was raising $500 million through a convertible bond issue. It was her signature achievement, a move to fund a massive expansion into automated logistics. I read the prospectus, not the glossy summary for investors, but the 400-page S1 filing. I read every line of the covenants. Covenants are promises. They are the rules the borrower agrees to live by. Break the rules, and the lenders get nervous. Dahlia, in her PR-fueled hubris, had agreed to a particularly novel covenant. She tied the company's financial stability directly to her zero-violence policy. Buried in Section 8.1d was an event of default clause. It stated that if a C-level executive, defined as CEO, COO, or CFO, was found to have committed a willful breach of corporate ethical standards, which were explicitly defined by referencing her own zero-violence policy, the bondholders had the right, not the option, the right, they could accelerate the note. Acceleration is a corporate heart attack. It means every dollar of that $500 million debt, plus interest, becomes due. Not in 5 years, not in 30 days, immediately. It's a call for cash the company simply doesn't have. It would trigger a catastrophic liquidity crisis, force a fire sale of assets, and send the stock into freefall. Dahlia had personally signed off on this clause, proudly calling it the new gold standard in corporate accountability. The second piece. The insurance. Every director and officer of a major corporation is covered by D&O insurance. It's a safety net, paid for by the company, that protects executives from personal liability if they get sued. As part of my firm's preliminary audit, I had reviewed Norcrest's policy. It was a standard, premium package from AIG, and like all policies, its true meaning was in the exclusions. Page 22, Section 4.3b. Exclusions. The policy would not cover, nor would the insurer be obligated to defend, any claim arising from willful misconduct, criminal acts, or any act of knowing and deliberate assault and battery, especially if said act, even if occurring off-premises, was a contributing factor to material reputational harm or financial distress to the corporation. The moment the bondholders triggered the acceleration clause, that would constitute material financial distress. The insurer would immediately point to the triggering event, the assault, and invoke Section 4.3b. They would deny the claim. This would leave Dahlia personally, financially, and legally naked. The company would be forced to cover the legal defense costs, further draining its cash, until a court proved her guilt, at which point they would have to sue her to claw it all back. The safety net was designed with a razor-sharp hole, and she had just jumped straight through it. The third piece? The contract. This is the linchpin, the mechanism. The zero violence policy wasn't just an internal memo. It wasn't just a talking point for the press. Dahlia, in an act of supreme vanity, had insisted it be appended to the master services agreement between Norcrest Dynamics and my firm, Palomar and Pike. It is Exhibit A mandated corporate cultural standards. Her signature, a sharp, arrogant slash of ink, is on the signatory page. By incorporating it into our contract, she hadn't just made it a policy, she had made it a deliverable. She was paying my firm to hold her accountable to it. She had contractually obligated me, as the team lead, to audit her compliance with her own rules. She thought it was a rubber stamp, a way to get a gold star from a top-tier auditing firm. She never imagined one of her auditors would be the one with the split lip. The trigger, the camera, the pieces were all there. All I needed was the evidence, verifiable, immutable, time-stamped proof of the breach. Last week, I set the final piece. I was at the house with my father for a planning dinner ahead of my move-in. Dahlia was, as usual, talking about the Norcrest safety campaign. "Security is paramount," I'd said, looking at the old non-functional doorbell. "You should have better visibility here." "Grant, for peace of mind." My father had nodded vaguely. "Oh, I suppose so." Dahlia had scoffed. "If you want gadgets, Tamsin, you can buy them yourself." "I'm not talking about a gadget, Dahlia," I said, my tone casual, professional. "I'm talking about optics. You're the face of the Zero Violence and Employee Safety Initiative. Having a state-of-the-art security asset at your primary residence isn't a luxury. It's an extension of the corporate brand. It shows you live the values. It's a pilot program for executive home safety. You could expense it." I saw the shift in her eyes. The idea slotted into place. Expense it. Brand. Pilot program. It was a language she understood. It wasn't a cost. It was an investment in her own PR. "Fine," she'd said, pulling out her wallet. "Here, use my corporate card. The black one. Have my assistant file the report. Code it to the facility's budget. Under the safety campaign." I smiled. "I'll handle it myself. Get it done right." I didn't have her assistant file it. I logged into the Norcrest procurement portal myself. I used her card to purchase the top-of-the-line doorbell camera, the one with the best low-light microphone and wide-angle lens, and in the justification field for the expense, I didn't write doorbell. I wrote, "Facilities asset, Foxbridge pilot program for employee safety campaign." I uploaded the receipt, I tagged it, and I waited. 12 hours later, the email notification hit my inbox. "Expense report E19344. Status, approved. Approver, D. Crane." She had just signed her own confession, a week in advance. The chain of logic was now a closed steel loop. The camera is not a personal device. It is a Norcrest corporate asset. It was purchased with corporate funds and approved by the COO. It was explicitly categorized as part of the employee safety campaign. Therefore, any footage it captures is not a personal video. It is corporate compliance data, directly related to the efficacy of the very campaign it was purchased to support. When Dahlia Crane, COO, struck me tonight, she did not just assault her stepdaughter, she, a C-level executive, violated the zero violence policy in front of a corporate-owned auditing device that was running as part of her own safety initiative. I opened my laptop. The single bare bulb in the storage room cast a harsh, clinical light. My cheek throbbed in time with the quiet hum of the ancient hard drive. I ignored the new email from my father, the one titled, "Please Tamsin, let's talk." I logged into the secure Palomar and Pike VPN. I opened the Norcrest audit file. It was a sea of green checkmarks and pending statuses. I created a new section. Section 5.4, Potential C-Level Compliance Breach. I kept the language cold, objective, an auditor's voice. A potential event of default, Refugio Bond Prospectus Sec 8.1d, has been flagged. This corresponds to a potential critical breach of Exhibit A, mandated corporate cultural standards, zero violence policy, by a C-level executive. An incident of verifiable assault has been alleged and is currently awaiting verification via metadata and video from a corporate-owned security asset. Reference expense report, E19344, facilities asset, employee safety campaign. I continued, mapping out the cascade. Potential consequences include, but are not limited to, 1. Triggering of bond acceleration clause, leading to immediate liquidity crisis. 2. Reputational harm voiding D&O insurance coverage, reference AIG policy, Sec 4.3b. 3. Immediate and material breach of contract with Palomar and Pike. I tagged the file. Critical risk, urgent partner review. I hit save. I didn't send it to Norcrest. I didn't send it to Dahlia. I saved it in our internal system. At 11:32 p.m., that flag automatically triggered email alerts to my managing partner, our firm's general counsel, and the head of the entire risk assurance practice. The fire was lit, not at Dahlia's house, but inside my own. They were now legally obligated to investigate. My pain was no longer a personal matter. It was a multi-billion-dollar corporate liability. The digital clock on my laptop clicked to 11:33 p.m. The countdown had begun. The single bare bulb in the storage room was unflinching. It was the perfect light for this kind of work. It bleached all the color from the room, leaving only hard lines and shadows. It was the light of an interrogation room or an autopsy theater. My laptop was open, the screen glowing, but the first piece of evidence wasn't digital. It was me. I went into the small, adjoining bathroom, the one meant for a hypothetical nanny who would never be hired. I looked in the mirror. The left side of my face was a canvas of fresh trauma. The skin was already pulling tight, a deep, angry purple blooming under the cheekbone. The cut on my lip was precise, a clean, 2mm split, still weeping a tiny, perfect bead of blood. This wasn't a face, it was Exhibit A. From my wallet, I removed a small, flat paper ruler. It was an architect's scale, but I kept it for verifying document print margins and font sizes in regulatory filings. It was marked in millimeters. I held it up to my face. The room was silent except for the click, click, click of my phone's camera. I was methodical. I shot a wide angle of my entire face, showing the asymmetry of the swelling. I shot a close-up of the cheekbone, documenting the ring's impression. I shot the split lip, with the ruler held next to it for scale. Click, I shot the blood on my white shirt collar. Click, I shot my knuckles, scraped and red from where I'd hit the iron railing. Click. I did not look like a daughter. I looked like a victim in a forensic file, and that was exactly what I needed. I tagged each photo with a GPS-less metadata stamp and uploaded them to the secure vault. Next, the primary exhibit. I sat on the cot, the laptop on my knees. I navigated to the S3 Buckets command line interface. The file was there. DBC 10182025210430.mp4. The original, high byte-rate footage. I downloaded it locally to a sandboxed partition. I ran a command line utility. SHA-256 sum, DBC 10822025, 210430 MP4. I hit enter. A second later, a string of 64 characters appeared. A4B, E91. A digital fingerprint, an unbreakable, mathematical proof that this file, in this exact state, existed, any change, even a single bit, and the hash would be completely different. I composed a new email. I attached the tiny text file containing the hash. I sent it to a digital notary service, a third-party, automated system that would receive my email, countersign it with a PGP key, and embed it in a public blockchain ledger with an immutable timestamp. The chain of custody was now complete. Anyone who questioned the video's authenticity would have to argue with mathematics. I permanently deleted the unhashed local file. Now the legal framework. I picked up my phone. I did not dial 911. Filing a police report was a public, messy, and emotional act. It would create a local record that Dahlia's lawyers could smother, spin, or bury. It was drama. I needed a corporate, clinical record. I dialed the 24-hour legal advisory line, a service provided to all senior consultants at Palomar and Pike. I knew the calls were recorded for quality assurance, which meant legal protection. A lawyer with a tired voice answered, "Palomar Legal Assist. This call is recorded. How can I help?" "I need to confirm a legal definition," I said, my voice flat, calm, "and receive a medical advisory. I am at a private residence in Ardent Falls at approximately 21:05 hours. A C-level executive of a firm I am currently auditing, who is also the owner of the residence, struck me twice in the face with an open hand and a backhand, causing a laceration to my lip and significant contusion." There was a pause. The lawyer's shuffling of papers stopped. "I see. Are you in immediate danger?" "No. The incident is over. I am in a secure room. I need to know if that act, as described, meets the state definition of assault or battery." "Based on your description, yes, that meets the statutory definition of battery and likely assault." "Thank you. That's noted," I said. "Given this description of injury, facial swelling, split lip, bleeding, what is the standard legal and medical protocol?" "You must seek medical documentation immediately," he said, his voice now firm. "An ER, an urgent care, or at minimum a video consultation to document the injuries for the record. Failure to do so could compromise any future claims." "Thank you for that advice," I said. "You've been very helpful." I hung up. I now had a time-stamped, recorded call with a legal professional who had 1, heard my immediate, factual report of the assault, and 2, instructed me to seek medical care, establishing a clear and necessary paper trail. My next call was to my actual family doctor, or rather, my former one. I left a calm, clear message on his after-hours service. "Dr. Alistair, this is Tamsin Vale. I have sustained facial injuries, including a laceration and significant contusion. I am requesting the first available appointment tomorrow morning to have these documented." He was a man of meticulous records and zero gossip. His report would be clinical, factual, and admissible. Now, to link the weapon, I went back to the Norcrest procurement portal. I navigated to the approved expenses queue for D. Crane, and there it was. Expense report, E19344. I took a full screen capture. The image contained everything. Item, doorbell security camera, executive home safety pilot, card, used, NCR facilities card, 311. Submitted by Tamsin Vale, on behalf of D. Crane. Status, approved. Approver, D. Crane. I saved the screenshot as E19344's approval, PNG. Next, the policy. I had it in my audit folder already. Norcrest Zero Violence. Policy Final, PDF. I opened it. I scrolled to the last page. Dahlia's digital signature. It was time-stamped. July 15th, 2025. 3 months ago. The ink was barely dry on her promise. Then, the PR. I went to the Norcrest Investor Relations website. The centerpiece on the homepage was still the video from the bond launch. A new era of corporate responsibility. I clicked it. Dahlia, on a stage, looking passionate, sincere, and powerful. "And this is my promise to you, to our investors, and to our employees," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "Norcrest Dynamics is a family. We protect our family. We have zero tolerance for any act that poisons our culture. We say no to harassment. We say no to intimidation. We say no to violence." I downloaded the full 10-minute video and the official transcript. I saved them. My desktop was now a collection of devastating, sterile facts. The MP4 of the assault, the JPGs of the injuries, the WAV file of the legal call, the PNG of the camera receipt, the PDF of the policy, the MP4 of the speech. It was time to assemble the weapon. I opened a blank document and created a simple flowchart, a logic map. It was the kind of slide I would present to a board to explain a catastrophic risk scenario. DBC 1182025, 2H10430. 4. Video of COO assault. E19344. Approval, PNG. Confirms video captured on corporate asset, funded by Safety Campaign. Norcrest Zero Violence Policy. Final, PDF. Breach of C-level morality clause, signed by COO. Norcrest Bond Prospectus Sec. 8. 1D. PDF. Triggers event of default for C-level breach. AIG DNO Policy Sec. 4.3b. PDF. Exclusion for willful assault, voiding insurance coverage. It was beautiful. It was a closed loop, a perfect, self-contained system of destruction. Every piece was locked to the next. The logic was indefensible. I created a new TrueCrypt container on my external drive, a file that acts as an encrypted virtual disk. I named the container Foxbridge Red, Vol. The password was a 64-character alphanumeric string I had memorized from my first risk audit. I mounted the volume. I dragged every single file, the photos, the videos, the screenshots, the PDFs, the flowchart, into the encrypted vault. I dismounted the volume. The container, Foxbridge Red, Vola, now looked like a single file of random, useless data. I uploaded this single file to my private, zero-knowledge cloud vault. Then, I ran a secure delete utility on my local drive, wiping every trace of the original files. My laptop was clean. The evidence was everywhere and nowhere. The clock on the wall read Woe 1:30. My work was done. All that was left was to set the timer. I opened my calendar. I went to Monday morning, 9:00 a.m., the exact moment the New York Stock Exchange opening bell would ring. I created a new appointment. Title: Send Foxbridge Red package for review. Attendees. Draft. Managing Partner, Palomar and Pike. Chairperson, Ethics Committee, Norcrest Dynamics Board. Legal Counsel, Wilmington Trust, Trustee for the Norcrest 2030 Convertible Bonds. I saved the draft reminder. I sat back on the cot. The metal frame squeaked in the silence. My face was a dull, heavy ache. I touched the swelling. It was data. It was leverage. It was the key. I closed my eyes. For the first time in this house, I felt a sense of peace. The chessboard was set. The pieces were in motion. All I had to do was wait for the clock to strike 9. Monday, 9:00 a.m., the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange is a starting pistol. I am not at a trading desk. I am in the cramped, cedar-smelling storage room. My laptop open. My face is a carefully constructed mask of foundation and concealer, a corporate facade over the physical evidence. The medical report from Dr. Allister, documenting a facial contusion and lip laceration, is already scanned and filed in the Foxbridge Red Vault. At 9:01 a.m., I hit send on 3 separate, pre-drafted communiques. It's a 3-pronged attack, not a single shot. One for the allies, one for the enemy, and one for the money. First, the internal alert. I open the Palomar and Pike Slack. In the Norcrest Audit Team channel, I type a simple message. Here at Partner Group, filing a P1 draft report for the Norcrest engagement. A potential C-level breach of Exhibit A Zero Violence Policy has been identified and verified. This appears to be a material event. File. NCR P1 Breach Draft PDF is now on the partner server. Recommend immediate escalation. I tag it. Red flag. Potential breach. C-level, the channel. Normally a slow scroll of auditing questions and expense report reminders. Freezes. Then, the typing. Indicators begin to pop up like panicked heartbeats. My managing partner's icon lights up green. He's read it. Second, the corporate alert, a formal email. Sent from my Palomar and Pike address. 2. Ethics, Committee at Norcrest Dynamics, Com, CC, Independent Directors, Board at Norcrest Dynamics, Com. General, Counsel at Norcrest Dynamics, Com. Subject, Urgent. Notification of potential sea-level breach. Norcrest Palomar engagement. Body, to the members of the Ethics Committee and Independent Directors, pursuant to the terms of our active auditing engagement, MSA 2025-018, and the covenants of Exhibit A, mandated corporate cultural standards, zero violence policy. We are required to formally notify you of a verified incident of policy violation by a C-level executive. A preliminary report, NCR P1 Breach Draft, PDF, detailing the incident and its potential legal and financial ramifications, Re 2030 convertible bonds, D&O policy exclusions, is attached for your immediate review. We are standing by to discuss the findings. Sincerely, Tamsin Vale. Team Lead, Corporate Risk Assessment, Palomar and Pike. I attached the simple, 2-page PDF summary, the logic map of her destruction. The email lands in their inboxes with the cold, hard thud of a lawsuit. Third, the market alert. This one does not come from Tamsin Vale. It comes from Risk Monitor 041 at Proton Mail. Comes from an anonymous, encrypted account I created years ago for research. 2. J. Kellerman, Acuity Capital, Com, CC, Compliance at Wilmington Trust, Com, the bond trustee. Subject, Notice of Potential Covenant Breach, Norcrest Dynamics, 2030. Convertible, ISIN, US 6553. Body, flagged. Potential event of default. Sec 8.1d. Re, sea-level ethical breach. Risk of acceleration. Recommend review. Attachment, Norcrest Bond Prospectus Sec 8. 1d, PDF. I attached only the relevant page from the prospectus, the one with her own signature on the covenant. Kellerman isn't just a contact. He's the most ruthless risk manager at Acuity Capital, the hedge fund that holds a 20% position in that bond issue. He's not a friend. He's a shark. And I just rang the dinner bell. The fourth and final pin is pulled at 9:02 a.m., a separate what-if email to Norcrest's D&O insurance broker, with my own firm's insurance advisory team CC'd. Subject, Hypothetical loss scenario query. Client NCR D&O team. We are running a stress test for our client Norcrest Dynamics. Please model a loss scenario. C-level exec commits willful, verifiable assault, as per state statute, off-premises, resulting in a zero-violence policy breach. This breach is the direct trigger for a bond acceleration clause, causing material financial distress. Question. Would AIG Policy Sec 4.3b, willful misconduct exclusion, be triggered, voiding coverage for the executive? Please advise, the broker is now legally obligated to open a file. The insurer is now on notice. At 9:05 a.m., my personal cell rings. It's my managing partner, David. Tamsin, I'm looking at your report. Tell me this is a joke. His voice is a strained whisper. It's not a joke, David. The evidence is 100% verified. I have the medical report, the corporate asset receipts, and an immutable chain of custody on the primary footage. This isn't an allegation. It's an audit finding. Jesus Christ. Tamsin. Primary footage? You're the victim? That's irrelevant, I say, my voice cold. I am the auditor on site who witnessed the breach. The file is clean. The risk is real. The bond covenant is live. There's a long silence. I hear him typing. Okay. God. Okay. Legal is already spinning up. You did the right thing. Stand by. And Tamsin? Don't say anything to anyone. Understood. At 9:30 a.m., the market begins to move. Kellerman didn't just review the clause. He acted. He didn't dump his whole position, But he sold a $10 million block. It was just enough. The algorithms that sniff for volume changes lit up. On my second monitor, I have a Bloomberg terminal open. NCR 475 6 1530 CONV, the yield, which had sat at a placid 450%, ticked up 4.5%, 462%. A chat bubble appears in a private traders forum. NCR feel heavy? Seeing offers lift on the 30s. Another replies. Rument of ethics issue. Sea level. Serious. The bonds were bleeding. A slow, steady drip. The cost of borrowing for Norcrest Dynamics was actively rising, in real time, because of what happened on that porch. At 11 a.m., Dahlia strikes back. She must have been inundated with calls from the board. She does exactly what a narcissist does when cornered. She attacks. And she lies. She sends a company-wide email to all 5,000 employees of Norcrest Dynamics. From Dahlia Crane, COO. Subject, Maintaining Focus Team. It has come to my attention that malicious, baseless rumors are circulating as part of a personal attack. Be assured, there is no truth to them. No incident has occurred. This is a distraction. We must remain focused on our Q4 goals. Norcrest has zero tolerance for this kind of internal drama. We will continue to build a safe and productive environment. It's a fatal mistake. She's just put her denial in writing, creating a new, separate piece of evidence. She follows it up, moments later, with a direct email to my partner, David, and the entire Norcrest board. She CCs me. Subject, Formal Complaint. Palomar and Pike, Tamsin Vale. David and members of the board. I am appalled at the unprofessional and malicious report filed by your employee, Tamsin Vale. This is a clear case of a disgruntled family member using her position to fabricate a slanderous allegation. There is no footage. There was no incident. This is a complete fabrication. I demand she be removed from this engagement immediately and that Palomar and Pike issue a formal retraction. I'm sitting on the cot in the storage room. I read her email. I see her lies, her rage, her panic. She just walked into the final phase of the trap. I wait exactly 2 minutes. Then, I hit Reply All to Dahlia Crane, David, Norcrest Board, Norcrest General Counsel. Subject, Formal Complaint. Palomar and Pike, Tamsin Vale. Body, Dahlia. The allegation is not fabricated. The incident occurred at 21:05 hours, October 18th, and was documented. The footage is not a fabrication. It was captured by Norcrest Corporate Asset E19344, doorbell security camera, which you personally approved under the Employee Safety Campaign. Per the terms of our engagement, the board has a fiduciary duty to review verifiable evidence of a sea-level breach. A secure link to the watermarked footage is provided below. Link: PNP Secure Evidence Portal NCR 001, Tamsin Vale. The link is live. Anyone who clicks it will see a simple black screen. In the center, a play button. When they click it, they will see the porch. They will see her. They will see the slaps. They will hear the sound. And in the bottom right corner, a semi-transparent watermark is burned into every frame. Property of Norcrest Dynamics. Safety Campaign. Asset E19344. She didn't just assault me. She assaulted me on company property. The digital silence that follows is absolute. No one replies. No one types. Then, at 11:15 a.m., the real bomb drops. An email from a name I didn't have on my list, a senior partner at Sullivan & Cromwell, the board's outside counsel. From redacted@sulcrum.com. Subject, litigation hold. Preserve all documents. Urgent and privileged. To entire Norcrest board. Entire Palomar and Pike partner group. Body. All recipients are hereby instructed to preserve all communications, memos, and data, electronic or otherwise, pertaining to the employment of COO Dahlia Crane, the Palomar and Pike audit, and the incident alleged on October 18, 2025. An emergency session of the independent directors is hereby called for 14 hours today. A formal internal investigation is now open. Do not reply all to this message. It's done. The lawyers are in charge. The process is now irreversible. At 12:05 p.m., my phone buzzes. It's not an email. It's a text message. From my father, Grant Vale. Tamsin, what have you done? Dahlia is hysterical. The lawyers are calling. You have to stop this. Grant Vale. You're destroying this family. I'm begging you. Just tell them you were wrong. Tell them it was a mistake. Please don't make this a big deal. I look at the gray bubbles. I think of him standing in the doorway, a useless, terrified spectator. I think of the stinging, echoing crack of the slaps he did nothing to stop. I type my reply. Me. I'm not making this a big deal. I am following the exact Protocol D. Crane signed into policy. I'm just doing my job. I turn my phone to silent. I look at the Bloomberg terminal. The bond yield is now 5.1%. The stock, NCR, is down 4.2% on heavy volume. The phone buzzes again, this time with a local Ardent Falls number. One of my father's charity friends. The gossip mill is churning. Ardent Falls is talking. But more importantly, Norcrest is bleeding. It's bleeding capital, credibility, and control. And the hemorrhage has only just begun. The Norcrest Dynamics Tower is a monument of steel and smoked glass that pierces the Ardent Falls skyline. It is a building designed to look down on the world. On Thursday, I took the express elevator to the 27th floor. The ride was silent and smooth, my ears popping with the altitude. I wasn't here as Tamsin Vale, the stepdaughter. I was here as Tamsin Vale, the team lead from Palomar and Pike, to conduct a previously scheduled corporate culture walkthrough. The summons had been issued by my managing partner, David, at the explicit request of the board's outside counsel. It was a formal, unavoidable meeting, and Dahlia, as the COO and the executive sponsor of the Zero Violence policy, was required to attend. The conference room was a fishbowl. 3 walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a panoramic, godlike view of the city below. The 4th wall was a sheet of frosted glass that blurred the hallway into abstract shapes. The table was a single, massive slab of polished granite, so dark it reflected the fluorescent lights above like a black, still lake. They were already there when I arrived. Dahlia sat at the head of the table, flanked by Norcrest's terrified-looking general counsel. 2 independent board members, a man and a woman in their 60s, sat opposite, their faces grim. At the far end was Marcus Thorne, the senior partner from Sullivan and Cromwell, his silver hair and impeccably tailored suit radiating an aura of lethal, expensive competence. A silent, efficient corporate secretary was already seated, her laptop open, her fingers poised. My father was there, Grant Vale, looking small and out of place in his Navy charity blazer, was seated in a chair against the wall, not at the table. He was there as a character witness, a desperate, last-minute gambit by Dahlia to appeal to some sense of family, of mercy. And my boss, David, sat next to Thorne, his face a mask of professional neutrality, though I could see the tension in his jaw. I walked in. I wore a charcoal gray suit, a white silk blouse buttoned to the collar to hide the fading bruises on my neck, and a layer of concealer so expertly applied it rendered my face a blank slate. I nodded to David and Thorne. I did not look at my father. I did not look at Dahlia. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice even and clear. It did not echo in the soundproofed room. "Thank you for making time for this walkthrough. Per the board's request, we will be focusing today on the verification protocols for C-level compliance with Exhibit A of our engagement." I placed my slim laptop on the granite table. The sound was a sharp, definitive click. I connected it to the 80-inch screen on the wall. The screen flickered to life, showing my clean, organized desktop. Dahlia watched me. Her eyes narrowed. She had aged a decade in 5 days. The skin around her eyes was tight with stress, but her posture was still ramrod straight. She was projecting an aura of besieged, righteous authority. "This is a ridiculous waste of time. Tamsin," she said, her voice sharp. "An abuse of your firm's position." Marcus Thorne held up a single, manicured finger. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Ms. Crane, please. Miss Vale is here at the board's request to present her audit findings. Let her proceed." Dahlia's mouth snapped shut. I opened a single file on my desktop, the video player. The timeline bar showed a clip of 1 minute and 12 seconds. I didn't say a word. I just clicked play. The screen filled with the image of the porch at the Foxbridge house. The warm, yellow light, the sound of crickets, my own voice, distant. Then, Dahlia's entrance into the frame, her voice, low and venomous. "Don't bring your trash in here." The room was utterly silent. No one breathed. Then came the first crack of the slap. The sound was obscene in the sterile, corporate environment. The general counsel flinched as if he'd been struck himself. One of the board members, the woman, put a hand to her mouth. The second backhand slap, my fall against the railing, the blood. My father made a small, strangled noise. He shrank into his chair, his face ashen, looking at the granite floor as if it might open up and swallow him. Then, my voice, a rough whisper from the screen, directed at the camera's lens. "Thank you for the timestamp." Dahlia's whispered threat. "In this house, I am the law." I paused the video. I left her enraged, snarling face frozen on the giant screen, the corporate watermark glowing in the corner. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Dahlia was pale, a sickly, greenish tinge under her expensive foundation, but she was a fighter. She laughed. It was a brittle, ugly sound. "A deepfake," she said, shaking her head with theatrical disbelief. "Really, Tamsin? This is your grand move? A cheap, manipulated video? My God, the desperation." David started to speak, but I gave him a minute shake of my head. I didn't need him to fight this battle. The data would fight it for me. "That's a serious allegation, Dahlia," I said calmly. "To suggest that Palomar and Pike would present fabricated evidence to the board is grounds for terminating our contract in a significant lawsuit." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then, I clicked my mouse. The video disappeared, replaced by the screenshot of the Norcrest procurement portal, her expense report, her corporate card number, her digital approval signature, glowing in green, status, approved. "This is the receipt for the camera that recorded the deepfake," I explained. "Purchased with your corporate card and coded to your employee safety campaign." I clicked again. A new window opened. It was a live feed from the camera's administrative backend. It showed technical data, IP address, signal strength, and a line of text. Device serial number 4A7B91C3E8D2. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the doorbell camera. I had uninstalled it that morning. I placed it on the granite table. It slid a few inches and came to a stop in the exact center. On the back, etched in the plastic, was the serial number 4A7B91C3E8D2. "The serial number on the approved corporate asset matches the device in this room," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the table. "The metadata from the video file is cryptographically signed and notarized. The chain of custody is unbroken. The footage is authentic." Dahlia stared at the camera as if it were a live grenade. The color drained completely from her face. She had been outmaneuvered not by emotion, but by process, by receipts, by serial numbers. Marcus Thorne leaned forward. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. "Ms. Crane," he said, looking directly at her. "The board has reviewed the evidence presented by its auditors. Do you deny that you are the individual in this verified footage, striking Miss Vale?" This was the moment, the kill box. She could lie, and commit a fireable offense by perjuring herself in a formal investigation, or she could admit it and be fired for the act itself. She opened her mouth, a small, soundless O. She closed it. She looked at her hands, then at her lawyer, who gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. She looked at my father. pleading with her eyes. He wouldn't look at her. He was staring at his own shoes. 1 second, 2, 3. The only sound was the secretary's keyboard. A quiet, relentless click-clack, click-clack. She was typing what wasn't being said. She was documenting the damning silence. 4 seconds, 5, 6. Dahlia's eyes finally met mine. For the first time, I saw not rage, but pure, unadulterated fear. 7 seconds. "Let the record show," Thorne said, his voice flat, "that Ms. Crane does not deny the authenticity of the footage." The secretary's typing stopped. I took back control. I was no longer the victim on the screen. I was the auditor, delivering the final report. I clicked the mouse again, bringing up the flowchart I had created, the logic map of her doom. "As the footage is verified," I began, my voice a clinical monotone, "we can now confirm a C-level breach of the zero violence policy, pursuant to the bond prospectus you signed. This constitutes a Type C event of default. This gives the bondholders, at their sole discretion, the right to accelerate the note, making all $500 million of debt immediately due and payable. This would trigger a liquidity crisis." I pointed the laser pointer on my remote to the next box in the flowchart. "Simultaneously, the D&O insurance policy is voided for this event under the willful assault exclusion clause, leaving you personally liable for all legal repercussions. Finally, as the policy is an appendix to our contract, Norcrest is in material breach of its agreement with Palomar and Pike, and per the corporate governance bylaws, the board has the right to immediately suspend any officer under formal investigation for a breach of this magnitude." Every word landed like a hammer blow in the silent room. The secretary's keyboard began its steady, metallic rhythm again, capturing every syllable. "Tamsin, don't—" The voice was a pathetic whisper. It came from the chair against the wall. My father. He finally looked up, his eyes swimming with tears. "Tamsin, please, this is enough. Don't." I turned my head and looked at my father, really looked at him, at his weakness, at his complicity, at his inability to stand for anything. "You're the one who told me to move back in," I said, my voice losing its clinical edge, becoming something quieter, more personal. "You're the one who's always said it. No drama, Tamsin, please, no drama." I turned my gaze back to the terrified board members, to the calculating lawyer, and finally, to Dahlia's shattered face. "I'm not creating drama," I said, my voice dropping to just above a whisper, yet carrying to every corner of the glass box. "I'm just turning on the lights." The silence in the glass room was absolute. My last words, "I'm just turning on the lights," hung in the air like dust motes in a sunbeam. They were not an accusation. They were a statement of fact. And in that room, facts were the only currency that mattered. Dahlia stared at me, her face a ruin. The mask of the powerful COO had shattered, and what was left was something raw and cornered. My father had folded in on himself, a collapsed structure of a man. Marcus Thorne, the board's counsel, broke the silence. He didn't look at me or Dahlia. He looked at the two independent directors. His voice was a calm, precise instrument of corporate law. "The audit finding is verified, and per the company's own bylaws, constitutes a material event. The board has a fiduciary duty to act in the interest of the shareholders. Emotion is not a factor. Liability is." As if on cue, his laptop, sitting on the polished granite table, emitted a soft ping, a new email. He glanced down. His expression, already grim, tightened. "Speak of the devil," he murmured. He turned the laptop so the board members could see. "This is from Wilmington Trust, the bond trustee. They are in receipt of a notice from a significant portion of the 2030 bondholders." He read from the screen, his voice flat. "Hereby give formal notice of acceleration of the Norcrest Dynamics 4.75% convertible bonds due 2030, pursuant to the event of default clause, Section 8.1d, triggered by a C-level breach of ethical standards." He looked up, The note has been called. Norcrest Dynamics has 5 business days to produce $500 million, plus accrued interest. Failure to do so constitutes a formal default. The general counsel made a gagging sound. One of the board members, the man, swore under his breath. This wasn't a problem anymore. This was a corporate death sentence. Ping. Another email arrived, this time on the general counsel's phone. He fumbled to open it, his hands shaking. He read it, and all the blood drained from his face. "It's from AIG," he stammered. "The D&O carrier. They're denying the claim for Ms. Crane, citing Section 483B, willful assault, material reputational harm. They will not fund her defense. The letter has been sent to her personal inbox." Dahlia's phone buzzed on the table. She stared at it as if it were a scorpion. She had been cut off. The money was gone, and the insurance was gone. She was alone. The chairperson of the ethics committee, the female board member, spoke for the first time. Her voice was steady, resolute. "Marcus, given these developments, the committee has held an emergency teleconference. We are delivering our formal recommendation to the board, effective immediately. To protect shareholder value and attempt to stabilize the market, we recommend the immediate and indefinite suspension of COO Dahlia Crane from all duties and responsibilities, pending the outcome of the full investigation." The trap was closing. The structure I had mapped was now assembling itself in real time around her. She was out of moves. The company was on a 5-day countdown to implosion. "A suspension won't stop the clock on the acceleration," Thorne said, stating the obvious. "We need capital. Now, today, our credit lines will be frozen by noon tomorrow. We can't draw down $500 million. This was my cue. The final act. "There may be a solution," I said, my voice cutting through the panic. All eyes turned to me. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single, leather-bound folder. I slid it across the granite table. It stopped in front of Marcus Thorne. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a term sheet," I replied. "From a private capital firm, Northbridge Capital. They specialize in special situations and corporate restructuring. They've been monitoring Norcrest's bond yields for the past month." Thorne opened the folder. He read the first page, then the second. His eyebrows rose. "They're offering an immediate $550 million cash infusion via a secured debt facility," he said, a note of disbelief in his voice. "Enough to satisfy the bondholders and provide 30 days of operating capital." A wave of palpable relief washed through the room, a lifeline. But Thorne kept reading. "The conditions are stringent," he said slowly. "Condition 1, the immediate termination, for cause, of the C-level executive who triggered the event of default. A suspension is not sufficient." He looked at Dahlia, another nail in her coffin. "Condition 2, he continued, is the temporary transfer of the terminated executive's voting shares into a blind trust, managed by Northbridge, for a period of 12 months, to ensure management stability and prevent a proxy fight. In short, they want her out, and they want her powerless." Dahlia's lawyer finally spoke up. "That's predatory. They're taking advantage of the situation." "They're solving the situation," Thorne countered, his eyes still glued to the page. "And they're taking on immense risk to do it. Who are these people?" "Northbridge Capital. I've heard the name, but they're quiet." He looked at me. "How did you get this, Ms. Vale?" "I am their advisor on this deal," I said simply. Dahlia laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "Of course, you set the fire, and then you show up with the water, for a price. Who is it? Tamsin? Some vulture fund you're in bed with?" "Not a vulture fund. No," I replied. "Northbridge Capital is the registered operating entity. The capital itself is provided by its sole limited partner." "And who is that?" Thorne asked, the final question hanging in the air. I let the silence stretch. I looked at Dahlia. I looked at my father. I wanted them to see this moment, to understand the full architecture of what I had built. "The capital provider," I said, my voice perfectly level, is a Delaware-based investment vehicle called the Foxbridge Trust. The name hit the room like a physical blow. My father gasped, finally understanding. The name of the street. The name of the house where it all happened. Dahlia's eyes widened. The anger, the fear. It all melted away, replaced by a horrifying, profound clarity. She was seeing me, not the inconvenient stepdaughter, not the emotional problem, not the junior auditor. She was seeing the architect. The Foxbridge Trust, I continued, leaving no room for doubt, for which I am the sole truster and beneficiary. My father looked like he had been struck by lightning. Tamsin, the money from your mother, you. I invested it, I said, never taking my eyes off Dahlia. I built a life, and I built a safety net. Marcus Thorne closed the folder with a soft thud. He understood completely. This wasn't a hostile takeover. This was a surgical removal, a self-funding coup. The board must vote, Thorne announced, his voice regaining its authority. The offer from Northbridge Capital is, as of this moment, the only viable path to avoiding bankruptcy. The motion is to accept the term sheet and to enact its primary condition, the immediate termination of COO Dahlia Crane, for cause. All in favor? 6 hands went up almost instantly. The 2 independent directors, the general counsel, even David, my boss, who looked at me with a mixture of terror and awe. Thorne raised his. The 6th hand was the board member who had sworn under his breath. He saw survival, and he took it. Opposed? Thorne asked. A single hand, belonging to Dahlia's one remaining ally on the board, remained down. He wouldn't even look at her. The motion carries, 6-1, Thorne declared. Madam Secretary, please record the vote. Legal will draft the termination notice immediately. It was over. I opened my laptop. On the screen was the e-signature portal for the Northbridge funding deal. I picked up the stylus. While the secretary typed and the lawyers began whispering, I signed my name, Tamsin Vale. I clicked execute. A confirmation box appeared. Funds transfer initiated. On Thorne's laptop, a notification chimed. He looked at it. The bond trustee has been notified that a satisfaction payment is in process. The yield on the 30s is already dropping. In the stark glass wall of the conference room, I could see Dahlia's reflection. Her face was a blank mask of shock. Then, as we all watched, her reflection's phone buzzed. She looked down at it, a system-generated email. Subject: Your Norcrest Dynamics access. Your security credentials and network access have been deactivated, effective immediately. Her keycard was now a useless piece of plastic. Her email account was locked. Her digital ghost had been exorcised from the machine. She was no longer the COO. She was just a woman in a glass room, stripped of everything. I took one final action. I hit print screen. The image of her shattered reflection, the deactivation notice on her phone, the grim faces of the board members, all of it was captured. I pasted the image into a new file. I saved it. Foxbridge Red Addendum Final, JPG, one last piece of documentation. For the file, the vote hung in the air, a final, unappealable judgment. For a moment, the world inside the glass box was suspended in time. Dahlia sat perfectly still, her face a mask of disbelief. The system she had built, the rules she had written, the power she had wielded, all of it had converged to annihilate her in a sterile, bloodless, 6-1 vote. Then the spell broke. It was not a sound of sadness or defeat. It was a sound of pure, undiluted rage, a guttural snarl that seemed to come from the very pit of her being. No! She shot to her feet, shoving her chair back with such violence that it screeched across the granite floor, the sound like tearing metal. Her eyes, wild and blazing, fixed on me. You will not do this. This is a lie. A setup. She snatched a copy of my initial report from the table, waving it like a weapon. She attacked me first, in my own home. I was defending myself from a hysterical, unstable intruder. She was storming towards the door, a whirlwind of righteous fury. I am filing a formal complaint for assault. I am filing a lawsuit for slander. You think this is over? This has just begun." She was playing her last card, the cornered animal's desperate attempt to reverse the roles of victim and predator. It was a lie so audacious, so contrary to the visual evidence, that for a split second, it gave the board members pause. Marcus Thorne looked at me, a question in his eyes. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I simply held up a hand. "One moment." My voice was a quiet island in her storm of fury. Dahlia froze at the door, turning back to glare at me, her chest heaving. The initial video file was edited for brevity, to focus on the physical event itself, I said to the room, my tone that of an auditor clarifying a data point. The camera's wide-angle lens, however, also has a high-fidelity audio component. The full, unedited clip provides more context. I clicked the mouse, the screen on the wall flickered, and the porch scene appeared again. But this time, it was a wider shot, and the audio was live from the very beginning. It captured the sound of my footsteps on the stone, the weight of the box in my arms, and then Dahlia's voice, not in a shout, but in a low, controlled, menacing tone that was somehow more chilling. "Don't bring your trash in here," my reply. "It's just books." Dahlia, her correction. "It's yours, and I don't want it stinking up the foyer. You're here on my sufferance. You will follow my rules." The board members leaned forward. This wasn't a hysterical intruder. This was a calculated assertion of dominance. The video continued. It showed me standing my ground, her advance, the slaps, my fall, and then, as she stood over me, her voice, a venomous whisper captured with perfect clarity by the corporate asset she had purchased. "In this house, I am the law." I paused the video. Marcus Thorne made a note on his legal pad. He didn't look up. "Let the record reflect," he said, his voice a death knell, "that in addition to the verified assault, Ms. Crane has just made a materially false statement to the board during a formal investigation, claiming she was the victim of an attack. This constitutes a separate and independent violation of her fiduciary duties and is, in itself, grounds for termination for cause." The lie had not saved her. It had only damned her more thoroughly. Dahlia's rage collapsed, replaced by a desperate, panicked search for an ally. Her eyes darted around the room, finding only the cold, unforgiving faces of the board. And then she saw him, her last hope, her husband. "Grant!" Her voice cracked, becoming the plea of a wife, not a COO. "Grant, tell them. Tell them what she's like. Tell them how she's always been difficult. You know her. You know this is a lie. Grant, for God's sake, choose. Choose your wife." My father, who had been a statue of shame against the wall, looked up. He was trapped. The entire room was watching him, waiting. His gaze shifted from Dahlia's desperate face to mine. He saw the faint, fading purple on my cheek, a ghost of the violence he had witnessed and ignored. He saw the cold, unwavering calm in my eyes. He opened his mouth. No sound came out. He looked down at his own hands, lying useless in his lap. They were trembling. He had made his choice. By not choosing, he had chosen. He chose the floor. He chose silence. He chose cowardice. Dahlia let out a sound, a wounded, broken gasp. Her last lifeline had been severed. "There's one more thing," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the tension. I slid a final piece of paper across the granite table. It was another expense report receipt. It was small, innocuous, but it was the kill shot. Marcus Thorne picked it up. "What is this?" "That is a receipt from La Vigne, the finest wine and spirit shop in Ardent Falls," I explained. "It's for 2 cases of Dom Perignon champagne, vintage 2012. You'll note the date of the charge, October 18th, the same day as the assault." "And?" Thorne asked. "And you'll note the expense code she used," I continued. "It's coded to the facilities, employee safety campaign, the same budget she used for the camera. She celebrated her bond launch by buying $2,000 worth of champagne, And she committed fraud by misclassifying it as a safety expense, the same safety campaign she used as a weapon. She also used as a personal slush fund. I looked directly at Dahlia. It's not just the wrong expense code. Dahlia, it's the wrong purpose. It's the wrong ethics. It's a perfect, self-contained example of everything that's rotten. That was it. The assault was a crime of passion. The fraud, no matter how small, was a crime of character. It was a betrayal of the shareholders. And in that room, there was no greater sin. The door to the conference room opened. 2 men in dark, nondescript suits stepped inside. They were not aggressive. They were calm, solid. Norcrest Corporate Security. One of them held a small cardboard box for personal effects. They stood by the door, waiting. They had been summoned by the board. The fight was gone. Dahlia stood in the center of the room, a queen deposed, surrounded by the ruins of her reign, the rage, the panic, the desperation. It all burned away, leaving behind a cold, hollow core. She turned slowly and walked towards me. She stopped just a few feet away. The security detail tensed, but I gave a slight shake of my head. Her voice was a whisper, a dry rasp. "What do you want?" she asked. "The money? The company? Is that what this was all about? You want it all?" I looked at her. I saw the woman who had terrorized my youth, who had stood by while I was bleeding on her porch. I saw the powerful executive, brought low not by a rival, but by her own hubris. "No," I said, my voice just as quiet. "It was never about the money." "Then what?" she hissed. "What could possibly be worth all of this?" I held her gaze. I let her see the 13 years of silence, the lifetime of being unseen, unheard. I let her see the face of the person whose existence she had tried to erase. "The acknowledgement," I said. Her face contorted in confusion. She didn't understand. She never would. The security guards stepped forward. One of them gently touched her arm. "Ma'am, it's time to go." She didn't resist. She walked out of the room, flanked by the 2 men. We all watched in silence. The sound of her expensive heels on the marble floor echoed in the hallway. We heard the soft ding of the elevator arriving. Then, the quiet, final swoosh as the doors slid shut. And then, nothing. The aftermath was not a storm. It was a series of quiet, precise, electronic pulses that rearranged the world. At 4:05 p.m., the press release hit the wire. It was a masterpiece of corporate damage control, drafted by Marcus Thorne's team and approved by the remaining board members. The language was sterile, scrubbed of all human drama. For immediate release, Norcrest. Dynamics announces leadership transition and secures strategic financing. Ardent Falls. CT, the Board of Directors of Norcrest Dynamics, NYSE NCR, today announced the termination of Dahlia Crane's employment as Chief Operating Officer. Effective immediately, the board has appointed an interim COO from its senior leadership team to ensure operational continuity. Concurrently, Norcrest Dynamics has secured a $550 million private debt facility from Northbridge Capital, a strategic partner. This infusion of capital fully satisfies the company's obligations under its 2030 convertible bonds and provides a robust financial runway for future growth. The board is confident that these decisive actions will stabilize the company and protect shareholder value. No mention of assault, no mention of fraud, just leadership transition and strategic financing. Dahlia had not been executed. She had been surgically excised from the corporate body, her existence reduced to a single sentence in a press release. By 4:30 p.m., the Ardent Falls Financial Journal, the local paper that had once breathlessly chronicled Dahlia's every philanthropic gesture and corporate triumph, had its headline. They used her own words, turning her PR slogan into an epitaph. "Zero violence, zero tolerance. Norcrest acts decisively on CO breach." The story was already written. The narrative was set in stone. She was not the victim. She was the breach. My phone rang at 5:15 p.m. The caller ID simply said, Grant Vale. I let it ring 4 times before answering. I said nothing. The line was silent for a moment, then a broken, raspy voice. Tamsin, I waited. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. He stammered. The words sounded foreign in his mouth, poorly rehearsed. I saw what she did. I should have stood in the middle. I should have done something. I looked out the window of my car, parked on a quiet street overlooking the town. The Norcrest Tower scraped the gray sky. His apology was 13 years too late and $1 million short. It was a pathetic attempt to absolve himself, to rewrite his own role as a spectator. You were standing in the middle, Dad, I said, and my voice was not angry, it was just tired. I was the one who had to step out. I ended the call before he could reply. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat. That was the last conversation we would ever have. I drove to the Foxbridge house. The warm yellow lights were on, just as they always were, projecting an image of family and welcome to the empty street. I used the key I still had. I walked through the front door, into the silent foyer. The perfect family photo was still on the console table, a monument to a lie. The air still smelled of expensive vanilla candles. I walked through the house, my footsteps echoing on the polished hardwood floors. It felt like a museum of a life I never lived. I went into the kitchen. The vast, cold expanse of the granite island gleamed under the recessed lighting. I took the single house key off my keychain. I placed it in the exact center of the island. The sound of the metal on the stone was a small, sharp click, a final, definitive full stop. No note, no last words, a key, returned. It was a transaction. I was closing my account. I walked out and drove away. I didn't look back. Back in the sterile anonymity of a hotel room, I executed the final steps of my protocol. I opened my laptop and composed an email to my personal attorney. Subject: Request for temporary protective order, attachment. Foxbridge read. Vol. Body. Eleanor. The attached encrypted file contains verified evidence of assault, fraud, and professional misconduct by Dahlia Crane. The password is the one we discussed. Please use this evidence to file for an immediate, ex parte temporary restraining order against her. There are to be no negotiations, no settlements, just a perimeter. Tamsin. I hit send. I was building a wall, a legal, binding wall she could not breach. Then, I drove to the climate-controlled storage unit where the boxes from my apartment were stacked. I unlocked the metal door and stepped inside. It smelled of cardboard and memory. I didn't turn on the light. I knew where everything was. I went to a box labeled Photos Old. I opened it. I sorted through pictures of forgotten birthdays and awkward school dances, and then I found it. A simple, faded photograph. Me, age 8. I had a gap-toothed grin and scraped knees. My arm was around my mother. My real mother. We were standing on the porch of our old house, the small one with the peeling paint, before she got sick, before my father met Dahlia, before everything. We were both laughing, squinting in the bright, uncomplicated sunlight. I took only that photograph. It was the one thing in my entire past that was not contaminated. It was the reason. It was the mission statement. I slid the photo into my briefcase and locked the storage unit. As I sat in my car in the parking lot, my phone vibrated. A text message. It was from the personal number of the Ethics Committee chairperson, Ms. Vale. This is to confirm that the board's vote for termination for cause is now officially recorded and ratified in the minutes. The matter is closed. We appreciate your firm's discretion. Check. The Queen was off the board, permanently. A moment later, a new email notification popped up. It was from a legal address at Northbridge Capital. Subject: Board Observer Seat. The Foxbridge Trust. Body: Dear Ms. Vale, pursuant to the terms of the executed financing agreement, we are pleased to confirm the approval of your appointment as a non-voting board observer for Norcrest Dynamics, effective immediately, for a term of 12 months. Your credentials will be forwarded shortly. Checkmate. I now had a seat at the table, A silent one, for now, but a seat nonetheless. I drove back to the Foxbridge house one last time. I didn't go inside. I parked across the street, in the shadows. The house was a perfect picture of suburban tranquility, glowing against the deepening twilight. It was a stage set for a play that had just ended. I looked at the porch light, the same warm, yellow light that had illuminated my face as she struck me, the light that had served as the key witness. I took out my phone, opened the doorbell app, and navigated to the settings, device controls, exterior lighting. I toggled the switch from on to off. Across the street, the porch light went out. The facade of the house was plunged into darkness, leaving only the dim, impersonal glow from the windows. It looked empty now, hollow. I put the car in drive. The story was over. The lights were out. Let the darkness speak for the rest. The next morning, the sun rose over Ardent Falls, but it was a different sun. The light felt thinner, colder. I walked through the town square, a place I had avoided for 13 years, and it was like walking through a city where I didn't speak the language. The buildings were the same, the faces were familiar, but I was a foreigner here. I was no longer a part of its story. I stopped across the street from the Norcrest Tower, the giant digital screen on its facade, which yesterday had cycled through images of Dahlia shaking hands at charity galas, was now different. It displayed a simple, stark white background. In the center, in the company's signature navy blue font, was the slogan she had created. Zero violence, zero tolerance. Her face was gone. The words remained, stripped of their author, an anonymous corporate commandment hanging over the town she once ruled. The reflection of the morning traffic slid across the glass, distorting the letters. I walked into the lobby. The cavernous space of marble and steel was a hushed cathedral of commerce, and he was there, standing by the security desk, as if he had been waiting all night. My father? He wore the same navy blazer, but it looked too big for him now. He had shrunk. He saw me, and he took a half step forward, his mouth opening as if to speak. He wanted to say something, to explain. Perhaps, to beg, to try and rebuild the bridge I had just burned. I didn't slow my pace. I didn't offer him an opening. I simply met his gaze, and in my eyes, he must have seen the vast, empty distance that now separated us. I gave him a single, shallow nod. It was not forgiveness. It was not anger. It was an acknowledgement of a stranger you pass on the street. It was a dismissal. He stopped. He understood. The words died in his throat. I walked past him, to the security desk. A woman I didn't know looked up. Ms. Vale? Yes. She slid a plastic card and a lanyard across the counter. Your visitor's pass, as requested by the board. The card read, Visitor Tamsin Vale, Board Observer. I didn't say thank you. I looped the lanyard over my head. The plastic card felt cold against my skin. I didn't need to go upstairs. I didn't need to attend a meeting. The card itself was the point. It was the receipt. I turned and walked back towards the massive glass doors. As I passed my father, I did not look at him. He did not look at me. He was just a man in a blazer, a ghost in a lobby. Once outside, the crisp autumn air hit my face. I stopped on the plaza, pulled out my phone, and composed one final email. To Ethics, Committee at Norcrest Dynamics, subject, urgent, notification of potential sea level breach, body. This is to confirm that the matter is now considered closed. No further action is required. No personal compensation or damages are being sought. I hit send. This was never a lawsuit. It was an audit, and the audit was complete. A gust of wind, sharp with the coming winter, blew across the plaza. It caught the edge of my hair, and I felt a faint, phantom sting on my lip. The cut was healed now, leaving behind a tiny, thread-like scar. It was no longer a wound. It was just a mark, a period at the end of a sentence. My phone vibrated in my hand, a notification from a banking app. Northbridge Capital, wire transfer of $550,000 to Wilmington Trust has been successfully disbursed. The money had moved. The company was saved. The machine would keep running, just with one of its gears replaced. I silenced the notification. I didn't need to see it. There was no sense of triumph, no flush of victory. The rage that had fueled me was a cold, dead star. The complex architecture of revenge had been built, activated, and had served its purpose. Now it was just an empty structure. There was nothing left to do, no one left to punish. No applause was necessary, no encore was needed. I stood there for a moment, the city moving around me, the noise of the traffic a distant hum. I thought of the box of books, the sting of the slap, the red recording light. I thought of the photograph of my mother, sitting safely in my briefcase. I turned and walked away from the tower, its shadow shrinking behind me as I moved toward the sun. I did not look back. No drama, I thought to myself. The words a silent, final seal on the entire affair. Just consequences. Fade to black, cut scene, the end. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. And if you really want to help out, smash that hype button to help this story get heard by more people.